what I wrote, does that get it, right? And that's just to kind of show people, we're taking you seriously, we're capturing the notes, right? After our community events, we normally try to, as soon as possible, hopefully within a week, we post all the raw data. Here are all the notes at the table. Here are the data from the worksheets that we had, you know, so we get them all right out. Then a few weeks after that, we might post a report of making sense of it. Here are the themes, you know, here's what we kind of learned, here's some interesting questions that came up or whatever. But we try as much as possible to kind of, and that's what we tell people at the beginning of events, this is how we're collecting data, this is what we're doing with the data, here's how, you know, and try to fulfill that. That's hard, right? Because that analysis takes a long time afterwards, right? So we'll show you an example here of the public notes, because we just have one group, so it's pretty easy for us to do on the computer. Now the disadvantage of doing it on the computer is not everything's going to fit on the screen, right? So you'll see it as she's kind of typing it, but then it'll kind of disappear in a way, right? We've done some processes, you know, there's now this technology that's basically a projector on stilts, right? So maybe if you want to go, want to give me a big grant, I'll buy a lot of those for me, or actually you should probably give it to Wendy. So it's basically a projector on stilts that turns your table into a projector, right? So the student can be taking the notes and everyone kind of sees it, those type of things. Well, so lots of ways. So the note-taking strategy is a process in itself, right? But the main thing is you want to kind of capture it. And to be honest, I do more and more writing now, having people do writing, for two reasons. One is most of this conversation, it's first one who talk wins, right? It's like popcorn style, which means all the extroverts talk, right? And the introverts don't. So writing kind of allows everyone to kind of get a voice in. Writing is just great data for me. You have a good question. So you have the conversation that helps people really think through the issue. And then at the end you say, you know, what's the most important thing when you're, even with the approaches, sometimes we'll have a worksheet that at the end of each approach we say, what do you like most about this approach? And what's one concern or question you have about this approach? So that now I'm just getting all that data from people, which is improving. Part of it honestly too is, I don't know how to teach students how to take good notes. So some of them are just good note takers and some of them are not. So we'll have 15 tables. In 5 tables, we'll have 15 pages of notes. 5 tables, we'll have 8, and then 5 tables, we'll have 1.5, right? And I'm like, I know it wasn't that the conversation was so much better else, you know. So by doing some writing, by doing some surveys, those type of things, it balances out and just gives you more information. It kind of goes back to that cycle of reporting. I want exposed to these ideas and exposed to interaction, like what are people thinking, right? What's important? So that's kind of, you'll see that. The degree to which the facilitator interacts with it, we'll talk a lot this afternoon. The notes are often your friend as a facilitator. It gives you a lot of reasons to intervene. It gives you reasons to jump in when someone's dominating, right? Because you can say, okay, I want to make sure we capture what you're saying, you know, instead of just shut up. You kind of, oh, what you're saying is so important, we want to write it down, you know. So there's good interaction between the facilitator and the note taker. I always tell my students to sit next to each other. Even if it's not public notes, they'll want the facilitator to see the notes. So they can kind of maintain a pace. They can make sure that the note taker's job is not to decide what's important to write down or not. So every person that speaks that says something substantive, the note taker should write something down, right? So if the note taker is struggling, then the facilitator can kind of help paraphrase or that type of thing. So I'll try to kind of exhibit some of those things. Be a little bit difficult because it's kind of behind me in a sense, right? But I'll try to kind of show you the pace of that as we go. Right? So if we're doing this for real, we did the introduction stuff, I introduced myself, we talked about the topic, why it's an important topic. With this case, we got it to you beforehand, and plus you saw the video, but so I won't do too much of the framing of the issue. I'll let that kind of frame. The other step, I guess we won't switch back, if you saw the steps in I form, one of the steps is personal stake. Well, personal stake is normally do it before the video, because if you do it after the video, people react to the video. But we just ask people, why did you come? It's always difficult to do personal stake during a training, because you didn't come here for the issue, right? You came here for, or if we're doing it in a classroom. But most of our real events, people decided to leave their homes and give a night to this topic, right? And this is part of that negotiation between too much structure and too little structure. So we first just want to say, why do you care about this issue, right? Let them kind of talk about it in their grounds before we provide our framework, right? And it does a couple different things if it works well. It helps people at the table see lots of people are coming this from different places, right? And it helps the facilitator kind of see what are some of the underlying values that are going to be in play today, right? So I'm going to try to model that. Again, it's a little bit weird to model it. I guess y'all are all tied to higher ed, so I'm assuming you have an opinion about this, right? But assume for a minute that you just saw a flyer about, hey, we're going to have a conversation about the role of higher ed in society, and you decided to show up, and then you're here, right? Sometimes the personal stake, you have everybody, and when my students are at a table, there's 6 people, 8 people, 2 students, and then 6 participants. We have everyone introduce themselves. The sooner you can make people talk, the better, because once they've talked once, they're much more likely to talk again, right? NIF forums sometimes are 20 people, and it would be hard to have all 20 talk at the beginning, right? It's called, a round is when everyone talks, and then popcorn is just you ask a question, whoever wants to talk to. So we try to do rounds every once in a while, and the fact that I have so many students, I can break up the groups into smaller groups, it's a lot easier to do rounds, right? This is a little bit, we have 8 people, right? So a little on the bigger side than normal, but pretty still small size, right? So I might not do a round, but I might just kind of try to get most of y'all to kind of explain, right?
Do you want me to record the personal stake?
Normally, we don't record the personal stake, right? It's just kind of a safe setting. As a facilitator, sometimes I might take notes for myself on a personal stake, just to help your memory. Because part of your job as a facilitator to make people feel heard, and for me to bring something up later on that, like when you introduced yourself, you said this was really important to you, and I can ask a follow-up question, right? So I might jot some notes down in terms of what people said, just because it might be useful for me. But we don't tend to take a public notes on the personal stake, right? It's just more kind of an introduction kind of thing. All right, so we'll kind of go into mode here. So we've done all the stuff in the front of the room. Now we're at this small table. Normally we wouldn't have tables. We would be at a table together, or just a circle of chairs sometimes, right? But I know y'all might want to be taking notes and that kind of stuff, so we'll kind of keep the table. We don't have these barriers as well. All right, so before we get into the 3 approaches, we want to do what's called personal stake, which is really just kind of letting you introduce yourself quickly, and just why did you come? Well, how does this issue connect to you? What's important to you when you think about this issue, right? So maybe we don't have to hear from everybody, but maybe we can hear from about 4 or 5 of you of just what brought you out tonight to talk about this issue in terms of, what is the role of higher education and kind of in improving our society. Who would like to start? Yeah.